Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
This episode of the Steadfast and Loyal podcast is brought to you by our friends at the United States Concealed Carry Association. Guys, the United States Concealed Carry Association, USCCA, was founded to help responsibly armed Americans like you. They're committed to providing life-saving self-defense resources to help you and your family be safe. When you activate your membership, you'll automatically get life-saving self-defense education, industry-leading training, plus self-defense liability insurance. Don't wait until it's too late. Click Learn More below right now. And just as a reminder, the United States Concealed Carry Association is not an insurance company. A policy has been issued to the USCCA by the Universal Fire and Casualty Insurance Company. That policy provides the association and its members with self-defense liability insurance subject to its terms, conditions, limitations, and exclusions. We'll be right back. Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. And as promised, we're joined by Ed Martin. Ed Martin is the president of the Eagle Forum Education and Legal Defense Fund. Ed was nominated by Phyllis Schlafly on 31 January of 2015 to succeed her as the president of both Eagle Forum organizations. Phyllis Schlafly, whom the board elevated to chairman of the board and CEO, said, Ed Martin is uniquely qualified and prepared to carry on the essential educational and political leadership of Eagle Forum that has made it the premier organization of grassroots volunteers in the conservative movement. He is fully committed to all the values and principles Eagle Forum has always espoused. Ed is a lawyer who holds advanced degrees in medical ethics and philosophy and was awarded postgraduate fellowship in Italy and in Indonesia. Ed has served as the chairman of the Missouri Republican Party. That's where he and I first met, and is a member of the Republican National Committee. He was chief of staff for Missouri Governor Matt Blunt, where he helped Missouri to pass pro-life and school choice legislation. And having run for office himself, Ed is well-versed in political strategy and tactics, how candidates win and lose, and how legislation is passed and defeated. In 2016, Ed co-authored with Phyllis Schlafly and Brett Decker the New York Times bestseller, The Conservative Case for Trump. He is also a frequent commentator on various media outlets. Ed Martin, it's great to see you, my dear old friend, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
Well, thank you, Colonel. And you left out your great kindness to us. We have great events in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and Philly, and we get these great speakers like you did. I think you did it twice, and it's back to back. So it's not an easy gig for somebody who's so busy, and you did that for us, and they loved you in Pennsylvania, and they loved you across the country. So thank you for having me on your podcast.
Always a pleasure and honor. So let's get caught up. What are the things that Eagle Forum is focused on right now from the conservative grassroots movement?
Well, it's been tough when Phyllis passed away. Phyllis died in September of 2016. We were very honored. Donald Trump came off the campaign trail to come to her funeral. It was incredible, but it's been a real transition for us. One of our founding touchstones was the pro-life efforts, and so we've stayed true to that and been a part of that. Another one, Phyllis was ahead of her time on the question of trade and international globalists. In the 1964 book, A Choice Not an Echo, she wrote about the globalists and the kingmakers and the threat to America from the Republican leaders who are putting us down that path. So we played a role in the last couple of years on that front. And then out in our states, we've tried to foster the next generation. We have, I'm going out to Idaho, to Boise in a week or so to see one of our a woman who's a state senator now, one of our Eagles. And, at our best, Phyllis did this, was we get some folks involved and then we sort of grow them up and out. And so they end up in, Congress. Andy Biggs was an Eagle, his wife and his mother-in-law. So we're in those issues in that space. All of us, I know, Colonel, we've talked about this and been on this. We're living in this world where Donald Trump is the dominant personality, and I love his positions, and I even love how he fights. But it's very tumultuous, right? And we're trying to feel our way, especially with this current president, who's done so many things that are so way out of to the left. I mean, way past what we ever expected. So it's a lot of it now. We're all in the opposition party. But I'm excited, especially to talk to you today about January 6th, because we now have leadership in the House, U.S. House, and they have a chance to do something. We have to help them live up to it, but we're excited about that.
Well, I have to give props first and foremost. Texas Eagle Forum leader Cindy Castilla doing an incredible, great job, especially in this area about child gender mutilation, these surgeries that they're pushing. So, keep her there in the mix because she's doing fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about it. You're the January 6th defense lawyer. And I got to tell you something, Ed. Never in my life, having served this country in uniform, would I see a Bastille-like prison system established in my country in Washington, D.C. Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's wild. And, you have to trust in God in these things. I passed the Missouri bar 25 years ago. And at the time, I waved into the D.C. bar because I thought, well, I don't have to take the test. I'll just wave in. And lo and behold, 25 years later, when they needed lawyers, and you've lived this, Colonel. They raised the cost of being conservative and being a public figure, meaning the left and the media. And so a lot of good people don't step forward, and so you say, hey, we need lawyers. These people are being persecuted. A lot of good lawyers just say, hey, I don't want the hassle. I don't want to be targeted by everybody. And so because of the position I hold with the Phyllis Schlafly organization, I felt like I had the ability to do that. So I stepped forward. And so, two things have happened. I represent 3 of the guys that are in jail. And I also now sit on the board of one of the organizations that was founded, the Patriot Freedom Project, to help the families as well as help the lawyers. And as you just said, I mean, to get close to this, I never imagined America would have this. It's not just that the Gulag in D.C., the jail was so unfair and nasty and mean. They used COVID as an excuse to clamp down on people, but it's a system. The system of justice is being so blatantly abused right before our eyes. I mean, when we get into this a little bit more, they're charging nonviolent, basically trespassers, people that came on the grounds, with a felony, and the felony is a made-up charge utilizing a law passed after Enron. You're back to your Texas folks. After Enron, a witness tampering law called obstruction of official proceeding, which is a witness tampering charge, but it's a felony. So if you're some guy and you're sitting in the D.C. jail, one of my guys, he's from Kansas, and he's charged with misdemeanor. Those are bad. You're going to get, broke a window, whatever. But then felony, and you're talking 10, 20 years. Well, now you're jammed up with a felony in the D.C. jury pool. And here's my point. All this would be nasty and terrible, and we'd be yelling about it, except it's in our nation's capital, and it's happening before our eyes, and it's not slowing down. They called a grandma in Denver. We got a call, the Patriot Freedom Project, a grandma in Denver 10 days ago. The FBI said, we're going to come, and we're probably going to arrest you. We're going to charge you with this. This is how many years after the fact? So it's pure terror. And it's a real corruption. And so, we're fighting our way through it, but it's daunting. And, I'll drop a little footnote here. Go ahead and see if you've lived in the public eye and you know how badly the public judges you when they lie about you. Well, now go and have Nancy Pelosi and Liz Cheney spend $1 million, $2 million, $5 million of running made for TV hearings, and then try to get a jury in the community that lives around that. You go into a jury in D.C. of our peers, And they convict these guys in 5 minutes because they've been brainwashed by these liars in Congress. And again, the liars in Congress, we expect, you had to live and work with them,
Yeah.
but the media going along with it, and the prosecutors going along with it, and the judges going along with it, it's beyond what we could have imagined.
Yeah, it really is. And you're talking about a complete violation of the constitutional rights of so many of these individuals. And what is the hypocrisy that gets me is that I have yet to see any Antifa leader,
Right.
any, Antifa person that has gone out there and destroyed billions of dollar property, Jane's Revenge, who is out there burning down pro-life advocacy centers. I've yet to see any of those people be brought up on charges and be held and detained. But yet somehow people, like you said, just a misdemeanor offense, maybe breaking in, trespassing.
Right.
They're ending up with felony offenses, which means what? They can never vote again. They cannot ever own a weapon again. To me, this has been completely politicized, and the left is seeking to draw this out. And yes, I believe that the real intent of progressive socialists, coercion, intimidation, threats, all of these things to get you to shut up and not stand up and say anything.
Well, that's guaranteed. And they showed their hand after the election before they started something called the 65 Project, where the left targeted the 65 lawyers who helped represent Donald Trump in the challenges to the election. They said, we're going to try to disbar you. We're going to try to make to take away your living. And it works, right? I mean, if you're a lefty, if you're Van Jones and you get run out of the White House for being a communist sympathizer, that's what happened to him. You know what he got? Multi-million-dollar deal, CNN. If you're Jeff Clark and you serve Donald Trump as an acting attorney general and you get out, they try to take your bar license. They try to take away your livelihood. I mean, the double standard is one thing, but as you point out, the fact is the rule of law is supposed to be, as close as we can, it's supposed to be equal to everybody. You mentioned the Constitution. Due process means the process works for everybody. And as you point out, Antifa's burning down buildings and burning cars. And if the standard is disruption, obstruction of official proceeding, where are all those Code Pink lunatics who disrupted the Kavanaugh hearings? Why aren't they charged with a felony, right? And so it's a pure double standard. But the problem is, usually when something is this bad, there are checks in our society, the media and even the bar associations. The ACLU used to play a role in not promoting the far left, but protecting liberty. I mean, that was what they actually did. I didn't always like it, but I always thought they were at least consistent. They're not consistent anymore. So those checks aren't here. And we're watching and here's the really dangerous thing, Colonel. They're not stopping. Right? It'd be one thing if they said, well, we're going to try to charge obstruction of official proceeding. By the way, let me be clear what they're doing here. It's supposed to be witness tampering. Obstruction of official proceeding is supposed to be if there's an ongoing investigation after Enron. Andrew Weissman, the guy that ran Mueller's investigation, is the guy who did this. And he's still doing it from NYU, where he's a law professor, talking back to his friends in the Justice Department. But it was supposed to be, hey, if you're tampering with a witness, suborning perjury or something, you can get charged with this felony. Here they say that when Mike Pence gavelled out the joint session, that was an official proceeding, and you banging on the door outside disrupted it. Now, if that's the standard, if that becomes the law, then you can't protest in front of your local school board because you're obstructing an official proceeding. If I get scared that and I gavel out the meeting, you just committed a felony. You talk about silencing voices and looking for a way to control us. This is high stakes. This is real stuff. And again, my point again to say out loud, where are the checks on this? Even the lawyers, the lefty lawyers in D.C. say they've never seen anything like this, that quietly. But yet the steamroller rolls on.
We do have that First Amendment right to petition our government for redress of grievances, but it seems without a doubt you have the progressive socialist left that does not want any redress of grievances. And you talked about it. I mean, we were going to declare parents as domestic terrorists, but the real domestic terrorists can still go out there and burn things down. How many people are still left in, as you say, the D.C. Gulag that have not gone before a trial or had a hearing or anything at this time?
Well, I think in D.C. right now, so it's kind of interesting. You'll love the inside scoop on this. As they realized that they were going to lose in November, they started moving the prisoners out. The things improved in D.C. and they moved them out to other places. So I think for a while they were down to like 35, but now they're moving a bunch of them back. So it's up to like 60 because there's a bunch of trials. But, again, for the listeners that are wondering, how can it be 2 years later and due process? You're supposed to be, there's a right to a speedy trial.
Yes.
And, I've been on the conference calls, and what happens on the conference calls, and this will lead to another part of our discussion, is the judge will say, we're in discovery, and on a conference call, everything's conference Zoom and all that. And the prosecutors will say, well, we've got a delay because we're reviewing evidence and reviewing video. And we have a hard time, the defendants, by the way, reviewing the video because we're all under a confidentiality order. And so we got to go into the jail and get laptops to our guys to look at the video to see what is the video showing of our guy who's being charged with something. So the judge will say, there'll be a motion from the prosecutor saying, we need to toll the speedy trial dates, the calendar. Mm-hmm. And the judge will grant that. And that's not an appealable action. It's not a final judgment. So there's nowhere to go. So you're just stuck with these guys that are stuck in jail. And, last night, our founder of the Patriot Freedom Project, who's a family member of a J6er, spent most of the night on the phone with a family of a defendant, somebody in jail, whose daughter, 11-year-old, was so upset she was hospitalized for mental breakdown, right? This is not, if it was just one guy, one soldier left on the battlefield, you'd feel bad and you'd want to get him. But what we're watching is the destroying families, and nobody's stepping up. Nobody's saying, what's the deal? I think you mentioned the Congress. We can petition our Congress, petition our government. And I think we're doing that on the new House, Republican House. But this is for those of us that are living through it, it's a 5-alarm fire, both for justice and for families. And we're watching things, burn.
When you talked about earlier the fact that you had this Kabuki Theater that played out with this J6 committee, is there some kind of way this can be moved out? Because here's the question. You kept hearing everyone say insurrectionist. Right. Has anyone been charged with insurrection?
No, of course not. No, exactly. That's right. It's not, there's no insurrection. There's no sedition. It's all, I call it, Colonel, the narrative machine. The narrative machine is big government, big media, and big tech. And they push onto us the narrative and we're told to swallow it. And in this case, it's a January 6th hoax. And the January 6th hoax, we have to bust it. We have to be hoax busters. If we don't bust it, you're going to hear my son's in AP history, and in the textbook, it talks about how there was an attempted insurrection in an AP U.S. history textbook. Wow. So we have to break the hoax. And, to your point, what can we do? The great news is Pelosi sent off to the National Archives, which, by the way, we, the Philadelphia Eagles, for about 5 years have been criticizing the National Archives. They've been partisan players for a longer time than this recent thing with Trump and everybody. They're really politicized. But she sent all the documents away. So for 40 years or 30 years of jive, you can't get what Nancy Pelosi did with that unselect committee with Liz Cheney. But McCarthy, the speaker, can now go and do his own thing. And so, what we're hoping, and we've got good people involved, but Colonel, I'm not saying it in the wrong way, but good people involved, they get caught up, they get dragged down by the sands of the machine too. And what we have to do is break out of the narrative machine and get the truth out there. And the truth is going to be, if Ray Epps is an operative, fine, find out. But there's a lot of other things that are going on. You and I both know, and you know better than I, there is a way that you're dealing with situations that could escalate. And nobody on January 6th handled it well. Why the heck did that happen? Why isn't anyone having that conversation about? And last thing is, I'm sorry to rant, but I get so excited. There's two pipe bombs. 2 pipe bombs were planted on the early morning of January 6th, and we can find the Idaho murderer in Pennsylvania by DNA. I'm proud we did. We chased that guy across and found that guy that killed those girls, but we can't find a pipe bomber who we have his video. You can see his sneakers. You can see his pants. You can see his sweatshirt. You can see his face. And the FBI's, chasing balloons across the country, but not a pipe bomber. A pipe bomber, not a talker, not a threat, not a phoned-in threat. actual pipe bombs, we're told. So we got to get to the bottom of that too.
Well, the interesting thing, just last week, Kevin McCarthy has turned over 41,000 hours of previously unreleased J6 footage. Are you going to get the opportunity to review some of those that footage, video footage?
Thank you for asking that. Just let me explain to people. Until now, we thought it was 14,000 until this recent last week when this came out, as you point out. So it's a lot more. It's 40,000. I'm not surprised. And again, Colonel, I'm not telling you something that you didn't live. You go to that Capitol or going to Washington, D.C., there's going to be multiple cameras on every angle, right? And so that's just the facts of life. So the short answer to the question is, when we started the defense of these guys, you had to sign on to a court order. That violation of the court order could be a felony. So I have access to some of the video for my guy, but we actually had one of the prisoners in there who gave his password to someone outside of the prison to look at and he got added. He got a felony added for violating that order. So we've been stuck where we can't get out of the system. And my hope with, Tucker's getting first crack at this is that first of all, if it's not a felony, I hope Tucker's staff is watching, listening to this podcast, they should leak it. Because if it's not a felony, it's a felony for me to leak it. But if it's not a felony I don't know what the rules are on the congressional grant that they got. But the back to the longer question, I'm happy that McCarthy did this with Tucker. I think it's a good start. But we have to get access. And the public needs to crowd review this and go through it and use all the tools we can to break the hoax. That's what we have to do. So I'm not complaining yet, but if we don't get it fully released, I will start to be annoyed because it doesn't help us change the dynamic. I got guys that had to plead guilty. The Patriot Freedom Project, we pay for lawyers. A lot of guys plead guilty because they're faced with go to trial and get 10 years or plead to 3 and you've already served 18 months, right? You'll be out in 6 months. This is a life decision. But we want those guys to have a chance someday to be pardoned because you can say this whole thing was a setup. And the only way we get to this whole thing was, and by the way, when I say setup, you and I both know, if somebody hits a cop, we got no time for that. But that's a charge.
Absolutely.
You can get charged for hitting a cop. You don't get charged for insurrection and obstruction of official proceeding when you walk in and put your feet up on a desk. So we've got to break the hoax. And right now I'm optimistic that what McCarthy's doing is the first step with Tucker, and that we'll all get a look at it. But I don't know I don't know that for sure yet.
Well, when you talk about the hoax, I mean, we continue to hear about Brian Sicknick. Yeah. He was murdered there. He was murdered there. The guy died of natural causes a day or two afterwards. But yet no one on the progressive socialist propagandist media is saying the name Ashley Babbitt.
Right.
Are we ever going to find anything as far as the one person that was killed on that day? An unarmed female that was shot and killed. What's going to happen look, let's be honest, it was a murder. What is going to happen to that individual that shot and killed her?
Well, I don't know the answer. I mean, on my good days, I say, yes, we'll get to the bottom of it. On my bad days, I think, some of these things are lost to history. And only when we go to heaven, God willing, we can find out the truth and see. And because the forces that are against us are not just, obviously not just Democrat, Republicans, establishment. So, but again, what we have to do is, and you were a Tea Party guy. We've been through this together. We know how the opposition, doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat, how they beat us. They beat us a lot of times by pushing us into the same corner, the same battlefield, and we have to reset, right? We have to change the dynamic. And, our friend, General Mike Flynn has been talking about local action, national impact. A lot of our folks are pushing and pulling in different places than just going up to Congress. I mean, one example is one of our defendants is from a state where the state attorney general is willing to take a look at this and see what they can do. So, I'm hoping what we start to do is pull the string on a lot of these things and we start to see what comes out. But, I just did another interview, Colonel, and I kind of got off the interview and I was feeling a bit down because I realized these people destroy a lot of stuff, right? When they see it coming, they get rid of it. So I worry sometimes that we're not even, we can't even get to that truth. But we have to make the effort. We have to keep retelling the breaking the narrative. And part of it is we have to write the actual history, right? We have to actually be able to write the history, whether we're in the AP textbook or not. We got to tell our story, and I think people feel that as well as are owed that.
Well, hopefully and prayerfully, we will get some strong governors and attorney generals that will stand up and protect the citizens of their respective states who are seeing their constitutional rights being violated, and they need to make us think about that. Ed, I'll give you the last word. What do you want everyone?
Well, the thing I'd like to encourage people is if you're upset about this, and I hope you are, there's going to be an opportunity to take a role in the upcoming elections, and I encourage you. But in the short term, the Patriot Freedom Project, which is what I work with, patriotfreedomproject.com, and there's other ones that, another secret of this, Colonel, is most of the people that are jammed up are working people, right? If you are wealthy, you got lawyered out. I mean, this is a conversation about justice in America, but most of these folks are working people. They're not worried about their mortgage. They're worried about their rent. They're not worried about their car payment. They're worried about their, changing the tires on their car. These are working class Americans. And, we get a call last night, and the Patriot Freedom Project sends, we paid some rent for this woman who was back on her rent. Her husband's in jail. She's got 3 kids. And when we do that, to me, that's a part of binding this thing together. So if people have the interest in supporting it, General Flynn has been supportive of what we're doing, a lot of others. It's patriotfreedomproject.com. I can assure you, we're fighting. There's nobody here making money. We're fighting for these folks, and it matters a lot. And, I think I'm optimistic, like you said. You're prayerful and optimistic that the future will be bright. Just got to keep pushing hard.
I think the thing that we have to understand is that the left are all about destroying lives.
Yep,
and we see that playing out. And they don't want to have any challenge to their tyrannical designs and intentions. So Ed Martin, the president of Eagle Forum Education and Legal Defense Fund. Thanks so much, Ed, for joining us. And we got to catch up because it's been too long, my friend.
Yeah. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad you're well, and thank you for all the ways you fight. They beat on you too, and you keep doing. You do what Phyllis did. You got that happy warrior mentality, so it inspires a lot of us. So thank you for that.
Always going to keep it coming at them. All right, Ed. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. Want to send out our appreciation to Ed Martin, the president and CEO of the Eagle Forum Education and Legal Defense Fund, and all the work that he's doing to defend the people there from January 6th. If you want to learn more, he gave you the email address, website that you can contact and connect with them. But as always, please hit that like button if you like what you saw today and share it with others. And until next time, God bless, steadfast and loyal.
Before they burn it down.